James O'Keefe. Ben Burgess. And last but not least, Tulsi Gabbard.
All right. So when you guys wake up in the morning, you got your coffee, you look at your computer, you look at your phone. What's your process? I want to know, from on a personal level, like how you're sorting out what the hell's going on in the world.
I wake up, my alarm goes off, I immediately pick up my phone and I open Twitter, and I just start scrolling through, and then I go, I'm not joking. And then I'm like, well, that happened. And then I sit there in bed lying up for about a half an hour, and then I, get to work, and then I'm like, wow, I can't believe it. I woke up to that.
James?
Well, I'm banned from Twitter, so... but distribution by proxy. Distribution by proxy, you know what I mean. I try to read a little bit of everything and try to read between the lines. That's the short of it.
Tulsi?
I wait a little while before I start scrolling through the news, catch my breath, and take care of, my personal time. And but I mean, Twitter is definitely not the first thing I go and look at. I'll scroll through a number of different news sources from across the spectrum and try to get an average on what's going on in the world, and then take it from there.
All right.
Well, I wish I could say that my answers was Tulsi's, because that sounds much healthier. But the sad reality is I'm much closer to Tim.
It's such a depressing way to start the day, though, guys.
But to be fair, Twitter actually is good when you're not just arguing with people. So there's real value in Twitter in that I have a list of people I follow, news organizations, activists, and personalities, left, right, and center. And so when I wake up, I'll see what CNN said. Then I'll see what maybe the Examiner said, and then seeing both perspectives coming from, establishment or maybe a left or a right source, then I'll have to figure out which one is actually closer to the truth. That's how I start breaking down the stories.
So we just had a little backstage extravaganza that I just wanted to touch on. Ben.
Sure. So if you think about media manipulation, then, and you particularly, if part of your concern is about social media manipulation, is about censorship, then you should think, well, okay, if you actually care about understanding the source of the problem, if you care about solutions, then you should think about what are people really worried about. We live in, despite being a wildly economically unequal society, that's not very democratic in many ways, we live in enough of a democracy that by and large people aren't worried about getting arrested. What are they worried about? They're worried about getting fired. Why are they worried about getting fired? Because the majority of Americans work in at-will employment situations in non-unionized workplaces where the boss can fire them at any time with no recourse and no due process. If you agree that this is a problem, right? And if you don't agree with that, I don't take you seriously on free speech. If you agree that that's the problem, what's the solution? Well, every member of every worker in every workplace in the United States should be a member of a union, because when you're a member of a union, you actually have due process. You actually have an organization that will represent you when you're accused of wrongdoing, the same way that a lawyer will represent you when you are accused of wrongdoing in the criminal justice system.
Have you ever been in a union?
So people aren't going to be afraid of getting arbitrarily fired. So, in thinking about this, leading up to it, I was watching a series of videos that Mr. James O'Keefe here did early in Project Veritas, where... Yeah. No, absolutely. So early in Project Veritas, where what is he doing? Is he sending in his little hidden cameras to CEOs meeting to talk about union busting strategy, or generals talking about drone strikes? No. He's surveilling ordinary working class people in order to demonize unions to make it easier to fire people. So he did this series called New Jersey Teachers Unions Gone Wild. And in that series...
Thanks for the free advertising.
Yeah. No, I think everybody should absolutely watch these videos to understand who and
They
what
should.
James is. And in these videos, he's doing two things, right? So one of them is he's asking union officials, oh, would you defend me if I did this? Would you defend me if I did that? Which is like asking a lawyer, would you defend me if I was accused of murder? Would you defend me if I was accused of double murder? Yes, that's what a lawyer is, and it's a good thing that you can't be in prison arbitrarily. It's a good thing you can't be fired arbitrarily. And in one of these videos, out of the many, many sleazy things he did, we didn't highlight this in the clip we did on my show. I wish we had. But in one of these videos, I do wish I had because I think it's an instructive case. So in one of these videos, he's talking about a teacher who was accused of saying the N-word, and then I don't remember exactly what the disciplinary process were, but they didn't completely lose their job. And he was taking this as, oh, see, unions think it's okay to say the N-word, which is obviously asinine, obviously thinking that somebody's career shouldn't be ended over doing a bad thing is not the same as saying the bad thing is bad. So just now, before we went on, a gentleman came up to me with a demeanor that suggested that, no indication whatsoever. Yeah, I'm being nice. No indication whatsoever that he was affiliated with James or Project Veritas. His demeanor strongly suggested that he was part of the staff organizing this event. Said, oh, can I speak to you for a moment before the panel? And so I came back with him. They did their thing, their entrapment journalism thing. And in the course of it, they said, one of the things that James said is, do you care about finding out the name of this teacher? And I said, no, because I do not. Because I don't think that if you did a bad thing at some point in your life, you deserve to be nationally named and shamed years later, whatever consequence you might have had at the time, whatever chance for rehabilitation there might have happened. And James, being the supreme media manipulator he is, responded to this by saying, oh, why do you think it's okay to use the N-word, which is obviously not what I said, but then again, James is a liar, so that is in character.
Evans.
James.
So the video can't allege anything. It's an inanimate recording. It quoted the woman, Alyssa Ploshnik, union official in New Jersey, saying the N-word. She actually said the word. And she said that a teacher was still teaching after calling the student the N-word. As a journalist, isn't it a journalist's ethical duty to find out who that teacher is and report it?
No! Obviously,
All right. Hold on.
duty of a journalist.
Bring it in, Tim.
You started this conversation with a political ideological statement from you about the importance of unions, completely irrelevant to media manipulation. You started your
extremely irrelevant to media
Absolutely. You
manipulation.
started the argument from an ideological perspective.
A perspective about media
Have you ever been in a
manipulation.
union? Just side question.
Yeah.
Which one? When?
I was in a couple. I've been in the.
Which one?
I've been in the UFCW and when I was working at Mayr in Michigan.
Noted and accepted. I didn't believe you. I couldn't imagine, based on what you'd said, that'd been true, because I've been in two unions. I was in the Transport Workers Union, and I worked at a grocery store as well, which also had a grocery workers union. And they were so corrupt that I was like, the statement you made is just like your perspective I can respect that's coming from you, but it's like a blanket subjective perspective. But I don't want to have an argument
Not
about.
at all subjective.
I don't want to have an argument about union.
However corrupt that union might have been that you were part of,
Two of them.
if you had been accused of an infraction subject to disciplinary process, then you would have had the option of having them represent you in that process. That
Wrong.
is- okay.
Bro. So I don't want to get into an argument about unions, other than to say, like, your subjective perspective.
It's not subjective. It's a fact that the effect of unions is to give you due process.
And sometimes they don't because humans are fallible. But I digress.
Okay,
issue
but you
here
can say
isn't-
the same thing about having trial by jury, that like sometimes
correct,
it's not
good
a
sir.
good due process.
So the issue is,
Still a due process.
we're talking about media manipulation. Instead of addressing the issue of what you take with James O'Keefe, his approach, and his video, you took a few minutes to go on about the importance of unions and the seriousness of individuals. Right away, that's a red flag. I don't take your argument as seriously because you're trying to make a political, ideological statement, not a journalistic one.
Well, first of all, obviously, Tim, I am like you very much in the business of politics and ideology, but also what I was doing was I was explaining the context of the disagreement with James that caused him to do his...
Right, your disagreement is that you think James is opposed to unions and his actions are based on opposition to unions and not that he had a question about a teacher using a racial slur. That is irrelevant to the question of, hey, here's a video, you didn't show...
It's not irrelevant. Everybody agrees you shouldn't use racial slurs. The question is, if you do, should you have protection when you're about to be fired for it? Should you have a due process? Should you, as a person who once did something bad, have your name spread over all of media throughout the entire country because you once did something bad in your life? And I don't think so. That's a question of values, but that is the context. That's the...
you.